Welcome to They're Not Like Us, the podcast where bold ideas and inspiring stories come to life. I'm your host, Aaron, here to challenge the norms and ignite your potential. If you're ready to level up, don't forget to subscribe and join the movement. Now, let's dive in. Hello, welcome back to They're Not Like Us. I'm your host, Aaron, and today I'm joined by Jared Jennings. Welcome to the show, Jared.
Hey, thanks for having me, Aaron.
It's my pleasure. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from California, born and raised. I am an entrepreneur. I own a business called Phantom Brands. I'm an online coach as well. I have experience being in corporate America. That's really where my desire for wanting to be an entrepreneur started. And now I work with a lot of e-com brands and I work with public figures to build them their own e-com brand. And I also coach a lot of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs on business, personal development, mindset, all that sort of stuff.
Cool. Have you always had an interest in kind of entrepreneurship and doing your own thing, or is that something that kind of developed through working in the corporate world? And
I think it mainly developed. I was pretty okay with going the safe route, the corporate route, climbing the ladder until I got into corporate America and had massive inflection points, realizations, and really came to terms with what it was actually like. And from that moment, I definitely knew I had to become an entrepreneur at some point. I just didn't know when. And that's really where it started.
cool. And what made you go into kind of e-commerce and down that route? What kind of drove you to that?
So when I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur and I needed to own my own business because I hated the corporate world so much, I was thinking long and hard about the business model that I was going to jump into. And mind you, I didn't know much about business at the time, so I had a pretty novice outlook on what was available to me. But I wanted to select a business model that aligned with things that I were naturally drawn to. And I've always been into fashion. I've always been into clothes. I've always liked dressing well. So I had the idea of creating a clothing brand, e-com clothing brand, that also intertwined with my passion for spirituality and things of that nature. So I combined those two passions into a brand, and that was my first ever idea of a business.
Cool. There's a huge failure rate, right, in entrepreneurship and businesses when you set out. I think it's like 20% of businesses fail in the first year, and I think it's about 50% close by year 5. So how do you deal with that kind of them kind of statistics kind of going against you and that kind of potential fear? Because it's all on you, right? You've got to keep driving it forward. You've got to keep putting that effort in. Otherwise, it stops and it goes horribly wrong, I suppose.
Yeah, I know those stats are real. I haven't taken a minute to think about them because I think they're a little too grim to focus on. But what I will say is, and what I've learned through entrepreneurship is, it's very much a mental game, and it's very much a founder game, right? Especially in the beginning, the business can only go as far as the founder. And when I came to the realization of how much of a mental game it really is, I placed a heavy focus on spending a lot of time in the personal development world to become a better founder, to make sure that, I could alleviate dealing with problems, essentially being able to deal with problems and being able to make decisions and survive and last. I think a lot of it has to do with who you are as a person. And I've spent a lot of time focusing on that to try to make sure I'm not part of those awful statistics.
Yeah, how do you deal with uncertainty? Because there's a lot of uncertainty with entrepreneurship as well and business, right? Because, for all the issues you get with a corporate route, at least you kind of know you're getting your paycheck, you know what it's going to be at the end of the month all the time. Whereas with business, you could have a really good month and then you could have a really shit month and then you'd be like, oh, it could really mess with your head a bit.
Oh, yeah, it's not for the weak, for sure. But I also think people downplay the risk and uncertainty of having a job because you could get fired too, right? A company could go through market changes. There could be a new CEO. There could be investor problems. There's a lot of things that could happen within a company, small or big, that you have no effect on. And I think that's something I really like about entrepreneurship is, yes, there's uncertainty that you can't control, but a lot of it is in your hands. Where if you're in a job, a lot of it is out of your hands, right? The people that really make the decisions don't even know you exist typically. So, yes, in theory, right, there's more uncertainty with entrepreneurship, but I like to just change the perspective of how I see uncertainty. And the better and the longer you last in entrepreneurship, the more skills you acquire and the harder you work over a longer period of time, the more things become a little bit more predictable with time. And so that's also like a light at the end of the tunnel type of perspective, where if I just stay consistent and I work every day and things compound, not only next year, but in 5 years or in 10 years, things will be very, very predictable with where we're taking the company.
Yeah, it's about those, and I spoke about this on a few podcasts. It's about those marginal gains, right? Those 1% improvements continually over time, and they just add up and add up and add up, and you'd be surprised what you could do over a period of time. I think we all kind of, I've heard it before, but we kind of all overestimate what we can do in a short space of time and underestimate what we can do in a long space of time, don't we? And we just don't have that patience.
It's profound. Yeah, it's really profound. Like, if you were to tell me when I was in my corporate role that my life would look the way it does now, I would think you're insane, right? It's expanded beyond what we thought was possible because of the consistent compounding work. It just adds up.
How do you cope with the kind of the workload then? Because a lot of entrepreneurs I know, and when I've done it myself, I've kind of been in that position where there's no off switch because it's your it's your thing. You're just constantly working on it. You'd never have any downtime. How do you find that? Is that something that you're experiencing?
I definitely have it a lot of times. I think that over a long enough period of time, you need to make time for things outside of your company, outside of, being in your house and being isolated if you're a solopreneur, if you're working remotely, because it's unhealthy, genuinely. So what I've done now is I make time in my calendar to see my friends and to see my family and to see people, because if I go too much of a hermit for too long and I'm just in my office for such an extended period of time, even though I'm connecting with people and clients remotely, it's not the same. And it really is a marathon over a sprint. And I would recommend that for everybody, honestly. As much as we're going to love to work and as much as we need to work, make the time to have people in your life that you enjoy spending time with.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take that time for ourselves and kind of have that off switch. It's difficult if you are a solopreneur and you work from home because you're always at work, right? I suppose. It's a bit similar to me with this podcast. It's always here, so I'm always just sitting here doing stuff. But you do need to find that time. Um, there's a study that I've seen that said something like 72% of entrepreneurs experience mental health issues, which are tied to kind of business stress and burnout. So, they end up with anxiety, depression, and all that kind of stuff because they don't take that downtime. They don't have that off switch, which, and I see all this stuff getting pushed about, hustle culture and all that, but there's a balance to it, right? There's a balance to everything that you got to get right.
Yeah, I agree. That stat actually doesn't surprise me because, especially in the first couple of years, at least for me, things have gotten a little bit easier than on day one, right? But within that first year, it's absolute chaos, right? You don't know what you're doing. You're diving head first, and you're jumping in, and you're taking all this risk, and it's difficult, right? It's a big world shift in your reality, and a lot of toll and stress will fall on you mentally and on your shoulders. And what we're talking about, I think, is very accurate to where not only do you need to develop as a person and your mindset and how to help you get through those things, but I think also spending time with people that support you is really going to help you.
Yeah, that mindset piece is really key. How do you kind of hone in and make your mindset or get your mindset to where it needs to be for you to get the best out of your business, but also enjoy your life really, and and have that peace of mind and happiness?
I focus so heavily on mindset. I'm a mindset coach too. So part of my coaching program is mindset and personal development along with business. So I've been studying mindset courses, books, mentors for some time now because I've always recognized its importance. But then when I got into entrepreneurship, I really recognized how important it was, because when you hear a lot of successful people say 80% of it is the inner game and 20% is the external, there's probably some truth to that, right? So it really sounded an alarm on the fact that I need to really, really focus on the internal game. So the meditation, the doing things every single day, programming my mind, the things I'm consuming and listening to, the content that I'm absorbing, I'm all very intentional with it, because we really need to do a great job, myself included, of protecting what we're absorbing and consuming. Because our state of mind, our physical, our mental state, how we're doing on the inside is really going to determine our decision making, our rationale, our productivity, our focus. It affects every aspect of how we're able to run a company. So I am very intentional. I'm very conscious of it. I'm doing things every single day to make sure that I maintain a certain mental state that allows me to run my companies.
Yeah, it's important, and like part of what I do is I use the gym as well, and I have some other coping mechanisms. But what specifically do you do? Do you use the gym or like any physical activity as well? Because that I find that really helps with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't miss. I'm at the gym every single day. If you want to look at my Instagram to hold me accountable, please do. But I'm at the gym doing something every day. I know it. I know it helps my mind more than my body, to be honest. I also meditate every single day. I'm also aware of the foods I eat and how I treat my body, because that is also going to affect my mind. I also do exercises like journaling and writing things down, and again, the things I consume, all to wrap around the fact that I want to take really good care of my mental and my mindset.
Yeah, it's vitally important, especially when you have any kind of setbacks or kind of this kind of volatility or uncertainty in your life or even in your business, I suppose. Have you had any kind of setbacks yet with your business or any major issues that have come up?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially that year one. But I would say the most profound was just when I started. Moral of the story was my Facebook got hacked, so then my brand was wiped off the internet. Because when my Facebook went down, my Facebook accounts went down and my Instagram went down. And so I'm sitting on inventory. I just launched 3 weeks ago. My brand's wiped off the internet. That was a little bit of a hurdle, right? And especially when you're hacked from somebody in the Middle East, it's like one of those things where it's like, what the heck? Why me? Right? And it's very easy in those moments to consider quitting, to lose enthusiasm, to lose momentum, to stop working because it's depressing, right? And so I've gone through many of those moments. And what I reminded myself is I only lose when I quit. So I'm just going to find a way to keep going. I'm going to repeat that slogan in my mind every single day and basically brainwash myself to not quit. And that is genuinely the only way I got through it.
Yeah, it must have been a bit of a rough one, especially if you're sitting on a lot of stock and stuff like that. It's not ideal, right?
No,
Did you get it?
was absolutely awful. Yeah. So what I ended up doing was I had to do basically a loophole, because the reason it was so important to have my accounts on Meta is to run Facebook ads to grow. And what I had to do was I couldn't verify and get back into my old account saying I was hacked. Like they wouldn't let me, even though I submitted passport photos and driver's license, they wouldn't let me get back in. So new Facebook account, new Facebook pages, new domain, and I had to create a forwarding domain in the ad account to send to my actual domain so I could actually run ads and get it up and running. So I had to make everything from scratch again. That's exactly what I had to do.
Yeah, not ideal, right? Not ideal. Um, what's kind of the most important lesson then that you've learned, on your journey from the corporate world into business and now to where you are today?
I would say it's very important to invest in yourself as early as possible, on your mind and on your business. And the reason is I waited like 6 months after I launched my first brand to invest in a course. And if I had done that earlier to gain skill sets that were very important, I would have saved myself so much time, headache, and money, because I got burned hiring before I knew the skill sets of what I was hiring for. And this doesn't just apply with business, right? This also applies with your mindset, because there are people right now that have done exactly what you want to do, and they are out there. And a lot of them have resources and things you can look at that are literally going to tell you exactly how to do them, right? There's no better shortcut than having the answers to the test. And I would say investing in yourself to having those answers earlier is going to save you so much headache, so much time, and make things so much easier on your end.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just kind of afraid, I think, but buying stuff online as well because they've been burnt in the past. There's plenty of people out there
Sure.
offer them support, and really it's just generic nonsense. So
Totally.
what would you say to those people who are a bit concerned about the programs that they might end up buying and stuff?
we need to be aware and understand if this is irrational concern or rational concern, right? A lot of people put the concern of moving forward as a mask of their fear. And some people just want to do their due diligence and they genuinely want to make sure they're going to get a good bang for their buck, right? So if this is something where you're not taking action because you're afraid of whatever it is, right? That's an internal issue. Like no course can or human being or mentor can convince you if you have so many limiting beliefs that you can't even take action. If you can take action, I would look for active testimonials, look for video testimonials of real people going in depth about their experience with said product, said person, etc., and consume their free content. Because over a long enough period of time, when you're watching someone's free content, you can't fake competency. You really can't. Like you can kind of get away with certain things here and there and maybe regurgitating things, but if you consume long form videos of somebody and a lot of their content, and it's clear to you and you have trust in their competency, do it, right? At the minimum, you're going to gain something from it. And don't even have the expectation of being life-changing, right? Just aim to get something from it, and I guarantee you will.
Yeah, that brings me to the point of kind of personal branding as well. How important is that? Because obviously, if we can, see how a person is kind of behaving, get to know them, we can build that trust, then we might think, oh, actually, I trust this person enough to buy that now. I'll they have my kind of best interest at heart and they're going to support me.
It's just the modern sales cycle, right? The sales cycle of acquiring customer has been consistent throughout human history. It just went from door knocking to meeting to flyer. Basically now it's content. They warmed up, right? So the more content we can post from a place of being vulnerable, showing our story, being authentic, talking about what we know, the more trust it builds in the quote unquote sales cycle, right? And the more trust it builds in the consumer's mind that they genuinely know what they're doing. And if I do decide to invest in whatever it is they have, I'm going to get a good return. And so if you want to do a good job of that from a personal brand side, I would recommend being authentic, telling your story, talking about the problems you've went through and how you solved them, and giving people value that way. And that is going to build a lot of trust so that they're more open to what you have to offer.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing, right? It comes down to trust. It always comes down to trust because it's human relationship, right? We prefer buying from somebody than some sort of faceless, unknown entity. So we like to buy from a person. So especially when it comes to like coaching or something that's a bit more personal, rather than, I suppose it's different when it's like e-commerce and it's just a product, because you're kind of buying the product and whatever else. But when it's a coaching, you kind of need to build that relationship. You need to kind of have that connection with them, I suppose.
Yeah, and yes, you're absolutely correct. And I work with my company Phantom a lot of e-com brands, and I still tell them to have a founder telling their story. Even though they're selling a product, I still, like, anything we can do to build trust on the consumer's end, we should do, right? So even e-com brands or even people that sell physical products, have a founder, get in front of the camera, tell their story, be personable, right? It's only going to help no matter what you sell.
Yeah, and I find that myself, even as a consumer, when I buy stuff, there's certain people that you just get invested in them, and you're kind of much more willing to buy anything that they put out, really. So
the masters at the game.
They are good. They are good.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're working on, Jared, to kind of build your personal brand as well?
Yeah, I've made much more of a concerted effort over the last few months to build a personal brand. I've been in the online world for some years now, but I just intuitively I felt inclined to create content and tell my story and put myself out there on X and LinkedIn and Instagram and on Podmatch, right? And going on podcasts. So it's been a conscious effort to tell my story, to give as much value as I can. And now that I'm doing it, I'm seeing how big of a benefit it is, not just from a reach perspective, but from a perspective of gaining that trust before you even have a conversation with somebody. Very similar to what you said, right? If we can build trust before somebody even talks to us, that is such a win. Because in the olden days, it was a cold call, it was a door knock, and you start the cycle as a cold stranger, and now they can go back and see hours of you talking and build so much more trust from that point.
Yeah, and I think especially podcasts. I know I'm biased because I have a podcast, but I think especially podcasts because it's not scripted. You don't have a script you can follow. Like a YouTube video, you could have a script and a teleprompter, and you could have something planned. But yeah, you don't know what I'm going to ask you, so I can ask you any question, and they get an authentic, real response, so they kind of properly getting to know who you are and what you're all about. So I think that's really, really valuable.
You're doing good work. I like it. Yes, I absolutely agree that we're talking vulnerability and being authentic. I think that podcasts are fantastic for that. I agree.
Absolutely. For people who maybe want to get into entrepreneurship, a bit worried about it, they want that safety net still. Maybe they just kind of want to dip their toe in the water and do a bit of a side hustle first to try it out. What kind of small mindset shifts could those people make to kind of get them out of that kind of corporate mindset, that safe, secure mindset, to kind of think a bit bigger and think about, achieving some bigger goals?
I think they're probably way too comfortable, and they're probably downplaying the risk of staying the same. We only look at risk when it comes to change, but we never talk about risk when it comes to our current environment, our current situation. There was a lot of risk of staying comfortable and not doing anything, right? You run the risk of genuinely resenting yourself for not taking action when you had an idea. You also run the risk of getting fired. You also run the risk of not even knowing what your potential is going to look like if you don't take the leap. But we never consider those questions because we're in a comfort zone, right? So if you're somebody that's flirting with the idea of being an entrepreneur, have those hard and vulnerable conversations with yourself of, what is the intent of this? And am I too comfortable? And that's why I'm not making a change. Because we really need to understand and have self-awareness of each other, right? Ourselves, and why we make decisions and why we act and why we do certain things. For example, for me, I went into entrepreneurship because I was in a ton of pain. I was very uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable. That is the only reason I took so much action. If I was comfortable, I don't know if I'd be here right now talking to you, right? And if we do want to own a business and we do want to be an entrepreneur, we need to be able to use that discomfort and that pain to get us to take action. And a lot of people avoid that because it's uncomfortable, right? That's the whole point. A lot of people avoid those conversations and being that vulnerable because it's going to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's where the growth is. That is where you can motivate yourself.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything to the point as well where if you're working for somebody else, you can kind of always blame someone else if something goes wrong? You know what I mean? You can't. But whereas if it's your business, you're the entrepreneur, you're a solopreneur, whatever, then you've only got yourself to blame, right?
It's a much more vulnerable experience, let me tell you, because you are the ship. You're the business, right? And when things inevitably don't go wrong because you're going to be a brand new entrepreneur, you're going to be naive, and things are going to happen, it's complete accountability. It's complete responsibility. There's nobody else's fault. And you just have to look in the mirror and be like, I need to get better. That's it. It's a skill issue. I need to get better skills. I need to do this better, do that better, do that better. And again, a lot of people are going to avoid that because it's uncomfortable. Like, who wants to look in the mirror and say, I suck? Like, I need to get better, right? No one really desires that experience as a human being. It hurts, but it's absolutely necessary to win as a business owner, right? And getting over that fear of judging yourself and looking at your faults is seriously, it's going to unlock a lot of things for somebody mentally. It's going to unlock a lot of things, and it's really going to be the path to having the business they've always dreamed of.
Yeah, and it's true because I look at my podcast and I watch them back and listen to them, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm awful, I suck. But then I look at the first episodes and the first couple of episodes, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
well, I'm better than that. So I am making progress. I'm getting there and I'm working on it. But equally, you've got to look at yourself and be quite critical and be like, well, you do suck, but you're on the right path. So
I think so long as it doesn't hurt your enthusiasm, so long as you just use it to gain awareness and get better, it's going to be a benefit to you.
Yeah, what you got to be careful is not to let it crush you, right? Because it could completely crush your confidence if you're too critical and you're not making changes. So I try to focus on one thing that I'm doing, and try to change that for the better. And just once I've got that right, then I look at something else. Because otherwise, if I look at it all, I'll be like, oh my god, I should just stop. This is a disaster. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So, but that's the same with entrepreneurship is, it's not a straight line, right? It's a series of like
Mm-mm.
pivots and peaks and troughs, and you've just got to kind of, if it helps, that's why people say find your passion, right? Because if you're passionate about it, even when it's difficult, you're more likely to stick it out, right? So I think that's kind of an important thing, to kind of find something that you will stick out because you have a little bit of interest in it. But that doesn't mean it won't get hard.
Yeah. So when I was forming my first brand, my first business, I had heard a lot about that. So I really was seeking out my passions to combine them into a business. Now, this can be fantastic, and that's very accurate. But there's also another side to that coin. And the other side of the coin is sometimes people pick a passion project for a business and the model sucks. Right? Like sometimes the business vehicle or the offer or the model is just it's awful, right? And if it's bad, you're going to have to work 100 times harder to get to where anybody else is going because you're in a sinking ship, right? And that's also where like acumen comes into play of just having experience being an entrepreneur to have the awareness and to understand, is this a good business model? Is this going to actually pay off? Because I've seen this so many times. They get married to the idea and they're not flexible in being able to pivot. And it's been 10 years and they're working on a model that just is really difficult to get off the ground. So I think there's two sides to every coin with it when it comes to that.
Yeah, I suppose everything with life comes down to balance, right? So you've got to take on feedback, because ultimately, if you're selling a product or coaching like a service, whatever it is, it's the market that will decide if it's valuable, right? And so you've got to listen to the market, and you've got to adjust, and you've got to pivot to that. But at the same time, you've got to try and not lose yourself in that, and keep your authenticity and what you're trying to achieve.
Totally. And that's something I didn't grasp when I launched my first brand. I assumed everybody had my style. Everybody, I really didn't take into account the market, consumers. I didn't understand psychology of buying patterns, right? And so having that knowledge before you jump into a model, a product, a service, whatever it is, wherever you're going, is going to help prepare you a lot. Because like you said, you may love it, but does the market? It's really all that matters, because you need the market, you need the people, you need to be able to transact. That's how you're going to make money. That's how you're going to grow your business. And that's what trumps everything.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, we've got to be real with ourselves, right? And we got to kind of look at ourselves objectively and be like, right, I really thought this was going to work, but it's not. Nobody's interested in it. I'm getting awful feedback. Now I need to adjust. It doesn't mean you need to completely abandon it, but it means you need to adjust and kind of find that path, and keep adjusting until you find the right path, I suppose.
Yeah, I call it flexible persistence. And on a small scale, I go through this all the time with content, right? And so I'll post a short form piece of content, and in my mind, I'm like, this is a great idea. And then I'll upload it and it just does like, okay. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess people disagree with me. And then I'll post something else where I don't think much of it and people respond really well. And I'm like, oh, that's, our ideas in our head don't really mean anything until we put them to paper and then we get feedback from the market. And that's when we can actually evaluate and understand if what we're doing is aligned with what people want.
Yeah, I've got that. I post stuff because I post clips from the podcast, and some of them you post, and I think, oh, this is going to be a really good one.
Yeah,
Nobody's interested in it, and then some of them
exactly.
you just don't think they're anything, and they just, for some reason, a lot of people like them, and they get shared, and it's insane. But like I say, you've got to listen to the market, because they're the people consuming the content and the product. There's no point me deciding, because I'm biased anyway. So.
And you got to take action, right? That's a lot of people fear taking action because they're overthinking in their head about getting it right and doing all of these things right. But the irony is, we don't know if it's right until it's out. So you need to do something. Like, you need to take the action, and then we get the feedback. It's impossible to get the feedback in your own mind about a product that's not even out yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it moves me on now to think about like your brand Phantom now. So how do you how have you moved into that to kind of help other people build their brands, and how do you help them with this kind of adjusting to the market and getting that all in place?
So Phantom started because my first brand, the clothing brand that I mentioned, it was streetwear, it was status driven, and I built a lot of relationships with professional athletes and musicians and entertainers, et cetera, because they liked the clothes. So I would send them the clothes if they wore it or not, whatever. But a lot of times they would, and then I would build relationships with those caliber of people. I then thought to myself, well, they love this fashion, they love this style, and they have an audience to where they don't need to market because they already have fans, right? They're public figures for a reason. So I offered them a done-for-you brand building service. And that's where Phantom was created. I've been building them brands, etc. And now we're also working with existing e-commerce brands to help them grow and do marketing things and different innovative strategies like that. So when it comes to the market, right, and when it comes to their brands aligning with a marketplace, my rule of thumb is we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? We don't need to disrupt an industry to make money. What I like to do is say, what are our core principles that we want to drive this brand on? And then I'll look at the companies that are currently doing it and thriving. And we will work backwards from their consumerism, from the buying patterns of their target audience and their consumers that are buying that brand, and take bits and pieces of what's working that we can incorporate and make it our own into our brand. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? There's so many ways to make money. You don't need to create a product that's never been out before. These brands, these companies have already done the work for us. They've already spent the marketing dollars. They've already tried different color schemes. We can clearly see what's working for them. Let's take bits and pieces, make it into our own.
Yeah, that makes sense because I mean, you look on TikTok and Instagram and that, and people just remake other content that's hit, right? People make an entire platform and I don't know, content creator, career, I suppose, if you can call it that, out of copying what other people have put out. They're successful. They do, don't they? So I mean, you don't have to. They just put their own little twist on it, and inevitably, if it works, it works.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very simple indicator if something's going to work, if it's worked before, right? And so you just take and iterate it. Obviously, with the brand, you need to be more unique in that regard, where content is a 30-second clip, whatever, someone moves on. With clothing or e-commerce products, this is going to be, this could live on for years. So it needs to be an iteration, but we also need to add our own spin to it, for sure.
Yeah, you're trying to build, a relationships, aren't you, with customers, aren't you, essentially as well. Again, like we said, that trust and bring people on board and whatever else. I think the content example was just to say that, if people use a blueprint essentially of what works, then you don't need to kind of rewrite the whole thing. We can kind of go, right, that works. How can we do that in a way that fits us, essentially?
You can do that with anything too. Anything. Content, service, product, health, fitness. Look at the people that are doing it well and just replicate them. That's it. That's the easiest, that's the shortest way to success, is just what's working, do it your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no more to say on it, really, to be fair, because like I see it all the time. It's the same patterns that people follow, right? So like even like I keep coming back to content because that's just something I'm working on a lot at the minute. So it's in the forefront of my mind. So but there's always that format in there. There's the hook, and then you keep people engaged throughout your content. Depends how long it is. If it's short form, it's not so bad, and then you just drop that value at the end to keep people engaged till the end. So it's the same format, and you watch the videos. Everybody's doing the same format essentially, but they just make a different video, put a different spin on it. So and it's the same with anything, really, and it's tried and tested way, especially with like brands and stuff. There's some huge brands out there have had some massive success, and I suppose if your clients have already got followers and stuff like that, that kind of makes it a lot easier because they've already got people who kind of trust them and kind of buy into who they are and what they're all about. So that must help massively.
That's the value pitch, right? Because when I was getting my brand off the ground, the most difficult aspect as somebody with no audience and no following at the time, like zero, was exposure and was converting, and the cost of acquiring a customer and getting my brand out there, right? It was very expensive because TikTok Shop didn't even exist. We just had to run meta ads. That was really our only vehicle. So it's such a value add when I can look at them and say, you're going to attain so much profit because you just have to post. Like, you have the audience, like you have what every brand would pay for sitting on your account. All you need to do is post, and it's free, right? And so it's a much more profitable model for somebody like that than somebody with no audience and needs to spend every single dollar they have to get that exposure.
Yeah, and I suppose if you've got an audience and you know, like a specific post has done well, you know, you can probably promote that one as well. So you get, you know, when you do put an ad out, you get more bang for your buck because it's already proven that, you know, people are engaged with it, they enjoy it. It gives you that kind of head start. Whereas if you haven't got no audience, then you're just promoting everything, hoping that something hits and trial and error, and you spending so much money trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Totally. It's a cheat code to already have that baked in data. Because obviously if you have no data, then we're just guessing until we get data, and then we can kind of make a better decision. So it's very important to have data when you're running ads, when you're doing organic, to have that feedback loop and to really be able to analyze the content and the performance to understand what is working and what should we double down on.
Absolutely. Jared, what's your views on manifestation?
I love it. I'm a massive fan. I think it's been watered down a lot in society. I think a lot of people's perspectives on it right now is that it's just foo-foo and people just sit around and just dream all day and things come to them. But in actuality, the ability to use your subconscious mind to create is very powerful and very real. I've seen it in my life in real time. And I think if you actually understand actually how to do it, there's a lot of truth to it, and it's very real because I've done it myself.
Yeah, you do see that a lot, where a lot of people just kind of, you know, play it down and say that it's nothing, and then other people who kind of, like you say, just think, oh, I want to achieve this. I just want to think about it, and it'll happen. Actually, there's somewhere in between, right? You actually need to do some work towards it as well. It's about getting your mindset right. You know, you focus on what you want, but you also have to work towards it. You can't just hope it just suddenly drops in your lap, right?
It's silly. Yeah, it's silly, right? There's a lot of people that will dive into it and just they'll journal and they'll, you know, think about things and no. Right? There's no way around the work. And I think that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping for like some magical way so they don't have to put in any work. There's no way around the work. It's just an accelerator, right? It's an accelerator to the work you're already putting in. And beyond the actual creation of the things you want with your mind, it's also really going to help you with how you should be thinking and how you should perceive things. Because when things come up, how you react to them is very important, right? So if you're in a scarcity mindset, when something comes up, it's going to have much more of a negative impact than it could if you were in a great mindset. And so those things are real, and those things that you're reacting to in real time show a tangible reaction to how you're thinking every day.
Yeah, and you know, ultimately, it brings me to like the placebo effect, right? It shows the power of the mind. So you know, the placebo effect exists. It can physically, you know, it can change you physically. So
it's crazy. Nobody thinks about the placebo. Like, it's crazy. Nobody thinks that about placebo effects at all. People cure themselves of life-threatening diseases from just the belief that they took a pill. That's insane. And everybody has that power. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's mad. And to be fair, I did a little bit of research before the show, and you know, there's I didn't find any studies with specific data, but there is some research that suggests that positive thinking improves resilience and kind of visualization, manifestation, and that. Those that do, they were like surveyed more than anything, but during the surveys, they reported higher levels of goal completion. So, you know, having your mind focused on what it is you want to achieve obviously has a positive effect in some sorts, even if it's just anecdotal at the minute.
Yeah, I think not finding any studies on that is like hilarious, to be honest. I would be curious to see how they were quantifying those studies and what they're doing, because if you read literally any book around wealth, it's Think and Grow Rich, right? It's like the most number one famous book around making money probably ever. And literally the entire idea of Think and Grow Rich is see what you want, visualize it, work hard every day for it, and be that person now. It's like the science. Also, The Science of Getting Rich is another fantastic book. You read any of these books, they all talk about the mind. They all talk about how to think. They all talk about what to see, and they all talk about the action. They'll say you have to take action, but this is how you go about it, and this is how you think. And then it's very predictable what's going to happen because we all have that ability.
Yeah, it's anybody successful, right? They all talk about mindset and that importance of, getting into that, the mindset of achieving your goals, finding their confidence. So, but a lot of people do it differently, but they all talk about mindset and about getting to that place where you're gonna follow through. But they all have to take action to get there as well, right? And that's the I find that's the difference. You get loads of people who take loads of action without thinking, and then you got loads of people who just spend their time on the theory and thinking, and not many people who kind of fall in between who actually go and get it done.
You need both. You absolutely need both. And it's a shame because I'll see people that take action, but they don't focus on the mindset. And it's like they're treading in water, right? They can't, they just, there's no breakthrough. Like they're moving. I see them moving, but there's no breakthrough because of all the limiting beliefs and all the traumas and all the things holding them back subconsciously. It's hard for them to move at their peak potential. And then I'll see people that are just talking about manifesting and they're talking about journaling and nothing happens. It's like zero. And I'm like, well, there's probably a piece missing. Like, if you don't have what you want, there's probably some gap that is disconnecting you from what you want. But when you do combine them, it's powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah, manifestation isn't just thinking about something; it's aligning your actions and your mindset to attract what you want, right? So, how do you practice it yourself, Jared?
So I meditate every single morning. I visualize. I listen to audiobooks and I listen to seminars around this entire topic, personal development. I read books. I'm very conscious of what I consume, what my subconscious mind consumes. I also write things down and journal and just consistently program myself to ultimately really just be the person that has the things I want now, right? And just really embody it now with no separation and just drill that into my mind because our subconscious mind or our conscious mind, they're going to be programmed whether we do it or not, right? So whether society is going to program you or we're going to program ourselves, there's programming being done. And I want to do the programming first. So I make a conscious effort to do the programming every single day and just have faith that it's going to compound.
Yeah, talking about that programming, what about, the people we have around us? Because a lot of the time we'll be surrounded by negative people or people who kind of hold us back, sometimes not even on purpose. They're not doing it to be mean, but they're used to us fitting in this category, in this box. This is who you are to them, and they don't want you to kind of step out and kind of move away or grow. What would you do if you were in that kind of situation, if you had that kind of negative people or people holding you back around you?
Yeah, and this is a very normal situation to be in, very normal environment to be in when you are the only ambitious person in your environment, right? And it's a weird feeling. And I went through a period of this as well where it's just a period of isolation. It's going to be really uncomfortable, undoubtedly. But it's like you'd rather be isolated than around people that are going to bring you down because people can be funny, right? People have a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't really know about. And something I've realized is people will not want you to accomplish what you want to accomplish because it would make them feel worse about themselves. And it's a very odd thing, but it's real. And it's just the reality of the fact that a lot of people are going to want you to not succeed because if you do, it'll hurt how they see themselves, right? They'll feel worse about themselves. So getting separation, even at the cost of isolation, is important because we can still consume things, like we can read books and watch content of people that are successful because that's how we want to program ourselves, right? And if we're not conscious about it and we're just in our environment and we're going through the motions and we're trying to start this business, but we still are around these certain types of people because we don't want to be alone, it's going to hold us back very, very immensely.
Absolutely. And I think, you do need to distance yourself from people if they are holding you back. If you identify somebody's kind of negative, pulling you down, holding you back from achieving what you're trying to achieve, you don't have to be mean to that person, but you kind of need to step away a little bit so you're not having as much exposure to that negativity. I stopped watching the news in 2016 because all it was is just negativity all the time, and I was like, it's just bringing me down, man. So I just stopped watching it because it was just such a buzzkill all the time and just set me off in a bad mood all the time. and negativity can really affect you.
Yeah, that like I said, the consumption thing, right? Like the news is something you consume, where like people do it subconsciously, but it has an effect on your state. I haven't watched the news in like probably since the same era, right? Because what's the point? I'm gonna watch someone die and say that this is awful and that's awful and this is bad and this is why would I want to consume that and be affected by that? It makes no sense.
No, and I still know what's going on in the world, because if it's anything big enough, that news, everybody be talking about it anyway. So, you find out anyway, or it's posted on social media or something. So you get all the big stuff anyway.
Yeah, and plus I'm on socials and I use it for business, so I see enough. And we also don't need to know that much, right? Unless you're like investing on a global stage and you really need to know current events to like make investment decisions. I'm making business decisions, so I need to know my market. I need to know what I'm doing, but I'm okay with not knowing that much about what the heck's going on. Like I'm okay with it. I think I'll be fine as long as I understand what's important to my consumers, my business, and myself. I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, we're definitely better for it. And then on the flip side, right, like you said, this consuming that positive content, that stuff that kind of serves us, or that is, pertinent to what we're doing. Like, and there's loads of crap on YouTube that you can find, that'll fit for what you're trying to achieve. That'll be positive and give you some advice or some positivity at least. And I think that's, like, consuming that is the flip side, isn't it? That can drive you in a positive direction. If you have no support, then there's other people out there, and then there's people like yourself who can like mentor people and support people as well, and give them that positivity from that side, right?
Yeah, it's greatly needed. There's a lot of people right now that are struggling beyond financially. They're just mentally, in a darker place. And I think mental health in general has never been in a worse place in the world, especially in America. With social media, with grind culture, with fake gurus, with all of these other things that are going on that you consume, right back to consumption, that we consume from social media, it's really taken a toll on a lot of people's mental health. And so I really do like coming in and cleaning someone out mentally and really fixing them up and having them leave the call all excited is really one of the pleasures of what I do.
Yeah. How do you go about that? How do you like kind of reset them?
So I want to understand first when I'm working somebody where they want to go. I want to understand where are we now and what's the end outcome that we're looking for. And then there's a series of things that I go through with everybody. And on a high, on a surface level description of these things, it's limiting beliefs, current beliefs, association environment, right? It's daily habits, it's how they identify as beliefs of themselves. All of these buckets you want to call, we need to basically dig out and replace with new beliefs, new actions, new habits, etc. So there's a lot of inner work. I talk them through meditations, I talk them through visualization, and the goal is to continuously program and reprogram them to be the best version of themselves. That's the end goal, right? We want whatever that end outcome is for them. I want them to become that person now, right? And then the materialism or whatever else comes to you naturally, right? But you can't go about this journey being like, oh, I'm just okay, like I'm kind of a loser, and expect to become rich or a winner. That doesn't make any sense, right? We want to be the winner now, and then everything catches up to us.
Yeah, and it takes constant work, right? And the work's never done, because, like, even however far we get on the road, there's always more we can achieve, more we can do, and we can still always get better, right? So there's that cycle never ends. It's about getting into that habit of looking, reviewing, and improving constantly, right?
Yeah, and I think that's awesome though. You know what I mean? Because if we're not working towards something, we have no purpose, no fulfillment. That sucks. That is when our soul will literally just die. Because we need to work towards something. A lot of people paint it in such a negative light. Oh, they're, working towards something's hard and difficult, and there's ups and downs. Try having no purpose and then let me know what you think is harder. Because having no purpose and having no fulfillment in trying to attain something that you want to attain is misery. I would much rather have purpose, be working towards something, having progress, than having nothing to attain. That's dire. That's a place I never want to be. So I think how we view the process is really important too.
Yeah, and the way I look at that, I think of it, like when somebody comes to retirement, right? So they work all their life, they retire, and then when they have no purpose or nothing that they're kind of trying to achieve or living for, they just kind of deteriorate.
Dude, they do.
And I know some of it's to do with age, but the people who get older, who still have a purpose, who still work towards stuff, they just seem to do so much better.
You need it. You need it to keep you sharp. If you just sit on a couch all day, I don't care how old you are, you're going to accelerate your death. Genuinely. You're going to accelerate it. My father is in his 70s, still working. I'm like, good, you need to, Dad, you need to work forever. I'm like, Dad, you like genuinely, so long as you have things to do every day and your mind is tested and your body is up and you're moving and you're walking around, you're going to have a better life. It's undoubtable, right? And a lot of people romanticize going on a beach and laying and having a pina colada the rest of their life. It's like, trust me, that's not the life you want. It sounds great, but that is not life at all. That's not what we're built for at all.
No, it's great for a short period, right? Like 2 weeks or whatever, maybe a month tops. But then after that, you've got no purpose. You've got nothing driving you. Your mind starts to go. Your body's probably turning into jelly, I suppose. At that point, it's not
Exactly.
ideal.
No, not at all.
So, Jared, where can people find you if they want to find out a bit more about you or get in touch with you?
Jared Jennings on all platforms. My coaching website is jaredjennings.com. And if you're in the e-com world, my e-com company is phantom-brands.com. But Jared Jennings, all platforms, you'll find me there.
Cool. I'll make sure I drop the link in the show notes so it'll be easier for people to find you and get hold of you and stuff. Before we do wrap it up, do you have any kind of final thoughts or messages that you want to leave people with?
Just do it. Take action. Again, the regret of not taking action is going to haunt you. It's going to hurt a lot more than you doing whatever it is you have an idea of. So take action. Don't live with regrets or resentment of yourself because you didn't take the action. You don't know how good life can get. Like you really underestimate the opportunities and the limitless potential that comes with you taking the leap. So take the leap.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of clarity and a lot of the good stuff comes from a place of discomfort, so we need to kind of be willing to put ourselves into that position that we're willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and it's totally fine. It's not even that uncomfortable, right? Like you could be in a war zone third world country and you're probably not, right? So a lot of times we're just having a pity party. It's really not that bad. Like you're going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. We got it pretty good in the Western society, haven't we? Let's be honest.
Yeah, we're totally fine. Like we have iPhones, we have computers. It's really not. Like I know it's uncomfortable, but it's not that hard. So you'll be okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you left to, you left your job or whatever to be an entrepreneur, I mean, you're probably going to get another job if you had to. If you have to go back,
get another job.
That's what I mean, man. If you had to give up, the business wasn't working or whatever, go and get another job. You've had a go at it. You've tried, and they always say, don't they? On your deathbed, you regret the things that you never did, not the stuff that you did do.
Literally, like you can get another job and you can regroup, pivot, retry. You have more information now. You have more knowledge. There's no downside to taking action, taking the risk, because even if it doesn't turn out how you want it to, you're going to gain information that's invaluable that you can use forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you might meet some cool people and, make some new friends and might open up some different doors. Who knows? So, Jared, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. It's been a great chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me.
My pleasure. Take care, mate. Thanks again for being part of this journey. Stay tuned. We've got even more great conversations coming your way.